Welcome to Off Panel.
Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper, and I'm coming to you from Seattle's Emerald City ComiCon, sort of, for a special in-person interview.
Ooh.
Today's guest is the colorist of books ranging from Batman and the Vision to The Autumn Lands and Injection, as well as the writer and colorist of the newly announced title, Redlands.
What?
It's Jordie Bellaire. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thank you, David.
So, yesterday, Redlands was announced. And it was at the Big Image panel. Mm-hmm. It was the Image Announcements panel. Mm-hmm. And I know you were kind of dreading it.
Yes.
I have to ask, how was the experience of getting up and announcing your book?
Oh, man. I was really nervous. I genuinely told Declan I think I might faint before we went on. I was in the hotel room. I don't know why we were so nervous. We've obviously been with Image for some time now, and I don't have a problem public speaking. I think for me, though, it really was like I said at the very beginning of it to everyone. I addressed that I was nervous, and I said, I am a colorist. Like, I'm not used to this much spotlight. Like, me and Declan argue a lot for rights of people, but I've often made the joke that I would not fight for myself, but I would, like, go to, like, the fucking pillow mattresses, as they say in The Godfather, for Matt Wilson or Betty Brotwise. I would fight people, but for myself, it's really hard. So talking about myself, though I'm doing it now, was really daunting. I think there's like this fear that you're going to get up there and everyone's going to just like leave. So I don't know, but I got up there and it was David Brothers was really sweet to me over the past week, like giving me nice encouraging emails saying that he would help me if I started drowning, and Kat Salzar as well. Yeah, she was really kind to me as well. So I felt good. I mean, having Image backing you up makes you feel good, and so we got there. So we got to the panel and everyone was really supportive and nice, and David Brothers was really cool and his introduction was good. And then like when I heard that applause at the very beginning, though I know that might have just been politeness, it definitely made me think like, hey, everyone's still sitting there. So I'm going to keep talking now.
That would be so weird if they actually just got
Oh, God. It was bad. I was really scared. And I wasn't the only one nervous, though, because then we were sitting next to the creators of Lumberjanes, and they were talking about, like, when they got on stage that they thought that they would puke. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there's something very nerve-wracking about announcing the book. Even Alish Cott, who has had plenty of books at Image, though, I mean, he probably wouldn't appreciate me saying it, but I'm sorry, Alish, you're a human being, and you do have a wide range of emotions. Mm-hmm. And he was nervous as well. Yeah. He was very nervous. So I think Image is such a one-size-fits-all. Recently at the 25th Image panel in Big Bang in Dublin during the big 25th week, he had this great thing where he said Image Comics is an arbiter of excellence. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's really true right now at this point. So I think that when you get up there and you are representing yourself, and I would say a lot of people don't normally feel like they are excellent, but Image has chosen you because they think they see potential in the excellence that could be there. You know what I mean? There's a lot of pressure in that. You start to wonder, like, are people gonna like it? Am I good enough for Image? Like, is this gonna be good enough to have the Image title? You know?
Do you feel like it's like a different experience because it's like a passion project and something that's totally coming from you? Like, if you were there when like Batman was announced, you probably wouldn't be feeling the same nervousness.
No, exactly. Like, even when Vision was announced, there were like a lot of negative comments at first, like, "Oh, this book looks so lame. Oh, this book's gonna be canceled in 6 issues." It's so stupid. People were basing these things off of nothing, but Vision was so successful. But like, even when I saw those negative comments about Vision, I was like, this is good. I don't care. But it is something about, I think, because it's coming out of your mind and your brain and your passion, it's way more frightening.
Yeah,
because that's your heart and your shit out there for everyone to see, and if they don't like it, it's almost, you don't want to take it too personally, but and I hope I don't, but it is a fear.
Yeah,
it's a fear.
You're putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not to steal from myself later in this interview, but it's a book that takes place in your home state of Florida.
Yeah.
It has a lot of you in it.
Yeah.
And as a person who's writing and coloring the book, I mean, it literally has a lot of you in it because you're writing it and you're handling all the colors and everything. So of course it's going to be more of a personal experience and scary.
Yeah.
Because
if they don't like it, that means no one likes me.
I'm going to be totally honest. Whenever I would publish a big article, I would lose sleep over it. And my wife would be like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, what if people don't like it?
See, I think it's a thing, because I was going to mention you, but I didn't know if you count yourself as a creator, but I do think you're a creative person. Mm-hmm. And I think that, because obviously you're very successful and there are many people that do what you do and they don't have the voice. You have a voice. And I think that there is a fear and a pressure when you have a voice, or you at least want to try to challenge yourself to speak with a voice. But what is it? It's like this great Ratatouille quote at the very end. I love Ratatouille, so no one's going to thank you. Yeah. And there's that great quote at the end that your fella gives. I'm forgetting the name of the critic.
Anton Ego.
Yes, thank you. you.
I use
of
that
course,
quote all the
ton,
time.
you go, yes, that,
Yeah.
it takes, what is it, bravery to create or something and to do something new. And I mean, of course, I'm totally summarizing it. Since you have it memorized, maybe you should just say it.
I don't have it all memorized.
Oh, okay.
It's like 500 words. He talks for forever.
Oh, but it's a beautiful,
It is
beautiful speech. And I think that sometimes when I watch that movie a lot, when I'm working, as I watch it a lot, it's beautiful and it's got a great kick-ass score.
And it's about food.
And Janine Garofalo is great. But it's like, I'm really glad that you like that movie. We're going to have to talk later. But it's a really good quote, but it's true. There is a risk in doing something new. I mean, now I feel like I'm bigging myself up like, oh, I'm so fresh and unique. Like, because that's also the worry is that because it's a passion, it's obviously going to be derivative in some way because it comes from the things that I've also absorbed in my time. So there's also a fear of, is this going to be original enough, or are people going to think that it's derivative or that it's a copy or regurgitation? You never want to be one of those people.
I think it's funny you say that. So I have to read from my little write-up here just because I want to get the summary right. For those who don't know what Redlands is exactly, it's about a coven of witches in the South as they, take over the town from the claws of the bigoted patriarchy.
Yes.
Would you say that's pretty fair?
Yes, absolutely.
It's really good. And I know you don't want to go too far into the plot.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting how... And this isn't to cast aspersions about your initial interview with it, but it seemed like people just immediately are like, oh, it's like The Craft.
Yeah, I liked The Craft a lot, but The Craft to me, I loved The Craft as a little girl, and The Craft is definitely in there somewhere. But for me, I think recently it's more like Gone Girl. Like I want to focus way more on, I guess The Craft isn't, what's the way of putting it? The Craft has like a lot of women, and I would say though it's more about women who kind of hate women, which is what makes, I mean, maybe women might disagree with me, but I love that about The Craft. I think it's got a lot of hate for women in the film, which is what makes it so interesting. It's all about like that Mean Girls thing, like, girls being terrible to other girls, and then also how you can be accepted into a peer group of girls and how there's always still going to be these infightings because it's all about the competition between women. But mine is way more about women who are together through thick and thin, and there is no competition there. They are sisters, even though they're not technically sisters, and it's way more about them sort of versus the world, and the world being the patriarchal world, the world of racism and misogyny, and just like kind of, I hate to say it, but like the far right. I don't want to like marginalize anybody. I think the book is hopefully going to be pretty self-explanatory once you open up that first issue. I think you'll see exactly what it's about. But I don't personally think it's like The Craft. I think it's more like Gone Girl in a way that Gone Girl for me is such a great film. It's about one woman who really is more of a rogue. She has no real sisterhood, but she does set out in her own way to kind of take people down. And that's more what this book is for me. It's less about a friendship group and more about like, cool, they're already friends. Cool, they've already been through like centuries together. There's no more infighting really. They're just out to fuck things up
right
at this point.
Well,
like,
and flip the script. I mean,
yes.
And that's the thing is like the very first page, like again, I don't want to go into spoilers, but it's like basically, I'm trying to remember the line. It's basically like, where them bitches at?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's just like, it really establishes a mood to it and kind of what you're dealing with in this town of Redlands.
Yeah.
And it works really well. But I'm curious, like how, this has been a project you've been developing for a very long time.
Yeah.
It sounds like. How did this project first come together, and how long have you been developing it?
Okay. Well, originally when I was in school, I was working on something towards the end of my college years. I graduated in 2010 or 2011 from Ringling, and I was Ringling School of Art and Design. And I started. I was really interested in film at the time. Really interested in John Carpenter. John Carpenter to me is like one of the most feminist horror filmmakers ever. I still need to write like a huge thesis on how he is. So I think John is so cool. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go off into a John Carpenter thing. I don't think John Carpenter like walks around like, I'm a feminist. Look at all my feminist films. But man, if you look at Halloween, Prince of Darkness as well, there's just such this great energy about women who actually are the tools of the devil, and they also are the devil, and they actually destroy the devil. It's fucking amazing. I fucking love it. So like that kind of stuff was giving me lots of like energy when I was in college, and it was really starting to go into my writing. And I was always a bit of a writer. I actually had like a really big concern when I was in high school about to go to art school. I had always been writing, and I had an English professor who was like the best ever. She came up to me when we're all doing those college admissions, and she's like, Jordan, where are you applying to school? And I told her like, oh, I'm applying to one school. I'm applying to Ringling. And she was like, huh, is that an art school? And I said, yeah. Do they have writing? No. And she's like, I don't understand. You really need to be a writer. And right there, I was like, me write things? And she was like, yeah, you have a voice. Like, you need to be, that's also where I first heard that phrase. And it like, felt so good hearing that from a teacher, a voice. But I didn't. I went to art school, and I always kind of wrote on the side. So when I got out of college, I was writing this thing that I initially was calling Abraxas. And Abraxas was way more tropey. I was way more into like Stephen King's Needful Things and John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. And I was way more interested in a single woman being like the tool of the devil, that whole like rites of passage at 17, which is always so clearly linked to menstruation and all these different things. But then I was like, as I was doing it, I started realizing, and I don't want to call out any writers who are in the industry right now who do it, but I will say that's a very common male perspective of the female in a horror film or in a horror book or anything is there's always the one soul sort of Buffy Summers type who goes and gets all these powers and then does all these things. She's normally stopping the end of the world, or she is the end of the world, that whole Antichrist thing. And for me, I started realizing this is not the story I want to do. It's so clearly transparent because it's obviously a fantasy for me, but it's also just so too tropey. It's like, is there anything beyond the single female protagonist who has a link to the devil? I don't know. I just started feeling so terrible. So I put it on the back burner. I was always writing it, and Declan actually has seen the pages I drew a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
I'm never showing those to anybody. But it was gross, and it had cool things, and there are still things that from Abraxas are going to be in Redlands, definitely, because it was still like a Florida type thing. But just the whole story was wrong. And then what really obviously got me going over the last 3 years moving to Ireland, through the looking glass, I was able to look back at America and really start to see about Florida things that I missed and things that I did not see anymore in Ireland, like really rampant racism and sexism. I have some really horrifying stories with police as well that happened when I was in Florida, that happened to me personally. Thankfully, I'm a white woman, so it wasn't as scary as it would be for many of my other friends of color or of other, I mean, if you have like a rainbow flag on, fucking pray for you. Who fucking knows, right? What's going to happen? It's so scary. And I didn't realize, I mean, it's like, because when you're in it, you feel scared every day. But until you move somewhere like Ireland, where they don't have guns, unless you're like a farmer or an officer. And actually, officers in Ireland who have guns have a gigantic sign printed on their chest that says "armed."
Right.
Like, that's insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, so you know what I mean. So when I left, I started realizing like that was a scary place in a few ways. There was a lot more there that I thought was so normal, but now I realized was really unusual, and that started leaking in. And then the thing that really set me off, I'm sorry this answer's been so long, was I watched this documentary with Declan called The 7-5, which is an extraordinary documentary, if no one's watched it, all about a corrupt police precinct in Brooklyn called The 7-5. And that was like right there. I was like, corrupt cops, Florida. Those go hand in hand. Sorry, Florida, but we got some real serious problems with our law enforcement. And then I started realizing like this is tropey in lots of ways, the crime story, and of course witches. But I think it's very rare that we see these archetypes of witches actually succeed in a plot or a plan. Because witches are always the archetype of women, of men who are fearful of women, or women who hate women, like the Craft, for instance. But those women always lose normally. And I knew as for the longest time, I want villains to win. So they're villains, but they are people.
Well, I think the interesting thing about villains and in general, I mean, we see it now. I mean, not to go Trump or anything like that, but villains is a matter of perspective.
Yes. And that's also what I'm hoping to do, is like show the perspectives, like what's really a villain, what's really a monster, or who's really a monster really when people are casting blame and suspicion. I mean, obviously now I feel bad. I don't want to say my politics, but again, if you read the book, you'll very clearly see what side of arguments I'm on. And so maybe some people might not like that, but I do think that hopefully people will stick around, because I'm hoping that it will give people at least that perspective to remember it's easy to point the finger and say terrible things and say somebody who made a bad mistake or a bad decision, something I would never condone probably, but wonder and understand, are we so perfect? Like, who is really perfect? Is there really such a thing as the perfect human or the perfect feminist? No, like everyone's going to fuck up and make a ton of fucking mistakes.
That is the nature of humanity.
Yes. And that's how we grow. So not to say criminals have the most wisdom, but I would say I do think that criminals can be rehabilitated, which is something that will be explored in Redlands as well. But what do they have to offer in the way of humanity? I'm so fascinated by all that stuff. So I mean, there's obviously a huge Satanist thing and supernatural stuff, but the criminal justice thing, and especially the way Florida treats criminals, like the Zimmerman case, like all those things, just, oh my God, it all gets me so mad, but so passionate. And that's really where Redlands has come from now. Yeah. Which is way further than it did in college, which was just like, girl gets powers. So I'm glad I waited like 6 years to develop it, because clearly the way the worlds went, and then moving to Ireland has given me so much perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is like, because the witches have been around for forever, right?
Yeah.
And like one of the things is you were talking about how you learn from mistakes. I mean, I actually think I learn a lot more from my mistakes than I do from anything else, and it like informs what you do. And I imagine being around as long as they have a very cultivated idea as to what right and wrong really means, and what, like, how you go about it, because like, maybe the way that they handle things in number one isn't the way that most people would, but at the same time it's like
rash.
it's the solution. It's they're like, they have a problem and they're trying to find a solution. I think it's really fascinating. It's a great read. But I want to ask, you've worked with Vanesa del Rey, who's the artist on the book, on both Zero and Scarlet Witch, right? What made her the right fit for Redlands?
I love Vanessa. She's from Florida. She's living there. I don't know if she wants to say she's from Florida, but for me, she's been living there a long time, but I know she is Cuban. But I don't really know which way she would say she is really from. But she's a Florida girl now, and we both went to the same school, actually, Ringling School of Art and Design, at the same time, but we never met somehow. Even
that's
though
hilarious.
I was too square. I always was at home doing my projects, and she was properly cool and hung out with cool kids, and I was not cool. Though she'd probably be like, I wasn't cool either, but to me, she seemed really cool. So I was doing my own thing, and so I never really met her, and I think she was 1 year above or below, I can't remember, but never met her. I always loved her work, though, even at school. And actually, I told Vanessa when I first pitched her the gig, I was like, I secretly was always in competition with you, because we used to have like the illustration wing, and they used to put up all of our work in these glass cases, like after projects. And so, I mean, a lot of the kids at the school were obviously very talented, but I'm a very competitive person. And people seemed to respond to my work quite well back then, which was nice. But whenever I would see Vanessa's stuff, I'd be like eyeing it in that glass case, like, I don't like her. She's too good. And then like telling her that, she was laughing like, really? Oh my God. And I felt like a creep. I was like, yeah, I've been in competition with you and you didn't know, but which is so lame. But now here we are working together, and I just knew she would be so good. I think it's really hard right now to find women in the comic book industry, and I don't mean it to knock any other woman's awesome sensibilities of art. I do think that there's so much awesome, interesting stuff, but I do think that it's very rare to find somebody like a Becky Cloonan or a Ming Doyle or a Vanessa Del Rey. I think it's a very, very unique style, and that's certainly what I was trying to do with my art as well. I tried to keep things really raw and really inky, and just my shit was never cute. So Vanessa just had such an interesting style that I think that I was just drawn to because, it's what I'm interested in. And then it was awesome because, of course, like, there's so few women that get to draw like that and get to also launch books for themselves. Like, they're not like just like a fill-in or whatever. And I know Vanessa has done quite a lot of that fill-in stuff. And I think she's well overdue for something I know she did Hit, though, at Boom, which went really well. Of course,
wasn't it a mini series?
Yeah.
So like, it's something that can be her own.
Yeah, exactly. So she's come, I think, even further, and she's done the Marvel stuff now, and she's done some DC stuff, and now she's getting to launch her own thing, which she seemed very interested in. She's all about trying to make her own stories as well. So I don't know, I just felt like we were going to be the perfect fit, and we both have such a love for Florida. I'm sure she also admits, or maybe understands, the creepy, weird sides as well. And that, I don't know. I have to say, I never would have even thought of her because she's too cool. It was Declan who said, just chance your arm. Chance your arm and ask her. And I was like, no. Vanessa's too busy. She's like got cool work. She's not going to work with like little old me, newbie writer. And he's like, you should just ask. And I asked her, and she was like, let's talk. And then that was it. And I hate to thank Declan for things that happened for me, but it was definitely Declan told me to push myself because I never would have asked her. She's just I've got stars in my eyes for her stuff. She's amazing. So she's a perfect fit.
So the book evolved a lot over, since you first started bringing it together. How do you feel? Do you feel like it changed at all once Vanessa came on and started bringing her imprint on?
Oh, definitely. Like, when I first wrote her, I want her to have as much freedom to do whatever she'd like. Like, right now, I think one of the biggest things for me was I knew racism was going to be a very a very important theme to me in the book, because, of course, growing up in Florida, there was tons of racism to the point that, like, you want to just punch everybody in the face. And I just knew that one character in particular, I don't want to give it away now because I don't want to make it look like we're ticking any boxes, for sure. So when you read the book, hopefully you'll see what one of the characters is. And if you don't, then maybe that character is not for you, but it will be for some people. I did tell her only one character had to be these particular things, but the other ones were totally up to her. I said, just make sure they look like they can kick some ass. I don't care what they look like. And she came back with an awesome Hispanic character and a black character. And I was so psyched because, like, right there, I was like, here we go. I can write all these like terrible racist themes now, and we can have these girls deal with racism. We can have these girls deal with having to be themselves. And of course, I'm a white woman, so I can't really speak for that. But obviously, I feel I am very much on the right side of history, and I do not want to ever facilitate a marginalized society fucking ever. So I'm just so psyched now that she gave us this this road to go down now, because without that we wouldn't have. And then recently there's like another character that'll show up who's very significant to the book. And Vanessa, she's so lovely. I mean, she like wrote me like, hey, because I don't give away ethnicities unless it's important to the book. Because
Right.
there are books and characters and things that I've written like, this is important. We got to do this because this is like a backstory. But most of the time I'm like, do whatever you want. And she wrote to me saying like, hey, I'm really sorry. I know that you didn't really clarify like what kind of ethnicity you had in mind for this character, but I made them black. Is that okay? And I was like, fuck yeah, that's okay. And then I got all these ideas, and now it's going to tie to this other character. And there's going to be like motherhood and more fatherhood and all this like familial tie stuff, all because of one cool thing she did. And even Declan was in the studio when I started like getting all excited all about these ideas. And he's like, that's what collaboration is. Like, it's so cool that it's such a small thing that she's done. And she was even apologetic. Like, I don't know if that's all. I was like, it's fucking great.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. But now it's going to inform so much more of the story and the character for me, because as much as people want to say race isn't a thing, race is totally a thing. And it's really hopefully going to make our universe far more interesting for me and for Vanessa and for hopefully readers, just to like be able to introduce so many different characters and so many different varieties. So she's all about that.
Yeah.
But outside of race and ethnicity and culture, she's bringing all this cool stuff in, just with like her storytelling is a little bit different than the way I write. I'm so used to Declan's widescreen stuff. So it's really nice seeing Vanessa tell stories like with inset panels and all these cool grids. And because I also don't describe shots, I want her to have total freedom. So she's just made some really, really cool decisions. I definitely see her as a huge, what's the word? Strength for me in my writing. I've often made the joke that at least if the book's terrible, Vanessa will be the one thing people buy the book for, because she's like, if people don't read it, they can at least look at the pretty pictures, and then we still can keep making the book because people are buying it.
I think it's really cool hearing about how your guys' perspectives have fed off each other, and like like it really sounds like a true collaboration.
I think
not
so.
like a lot of times comics get this like assembly line mentality, especially when you're trying to reach meet schedules and everything like that. But I mean, you guys really played off each other, and the book sounds stronger for it, and that's amazing.
So. I really hope so. And I'm always asking Vanessa to tell me what she wants more of and what she doesn't want more of, or like anything she wants to see. And I like recently she did say like, I love beaches, and I'm like, girl, I got you. We're gonna do some
you
beaches.
are in Florida.
Exactly. We haven't had a beach scene yet, and like recently I wrote to her saying like, we're gonna have like whole maybe 2 issues where there's gonna be a hurricane. Are you in for drawing rain? She's like, yeah. So like I love that because we're both from Florida, so we both get it. Oh, and I hate to go off on one more thing, but like one of the last scenes of one of my books, I talk about, because of course I also talk about color a lot in my scripts because I'm a nerd and that's my job. So I'm always talking about like how color will affect things. And one of the scenes at the end, we have like, I don't know how to explain it. I think unless you're really from Florida or Georgia, you don't know really what this like evening dusk shower really looks like. It's this beautiful moment in Florida that happens a lot where it's sunset and it's raining and it's so beautiful. It really is beautiful. And it's humid and it's hot, and there's just a certain thing about it that's just so Florida. And I was describing it, and it was one of the best compliments I've ever gotten from Vanessa so far, is that she wrote back saying, this issue made me really miss home, because she was in California at the time.
That's awesome.
And I was like, then like, I know we're doing it. Like we know exactly what we're going for. Yeah.
I was going to ask how your dual role as writer and colorist, like how does that inform each other? Like, do you find, it sounds like you're making notes in the script about colors in specific, but do you find that the way you think as a colorist actively informs how you write?
Oh, definitely. I always thought more like an illustrator too. So I'm always attaching reference images for her. I'm always talking about color a little bit, but again, mostly I really want her to do her own thing. But it might be something where I'm like, even more technical notes like, hey, you don't have to draw this, just draw the square and I'll paint it in, because like this will look cool more painted. Or if you want to use your own brushes, but I'm totally cool doing it. Or even something more just like, I really love this old refinery. Here's some images, and I think it'll look really cool when I color it. And so she knows exactly, because now we've worked together. I think she knows what to expect from me, and I know what to expect from her. And we both went to the same school, so I think we also are benefiting from the same education in illustration, because she also majored in illustration. So I don't know. I really cannot think of a better potential team in terms of creative collaboration and understanding.
Yeah.
Again, both from Florida, both women. Like, I don't know. Hopefully it's all on running on all cylinders. So I don't know how much I even have to describe, but I just feel like we're both even sometimes in each other's heads. Does that make, even though we don't Skype, we don't even talk, but like Declan's always like, you should Skype more. Like, I'm too busy and I don't think we need to, because I write something and she draws it exactly, like, and I don't even give her that much. And I think it's, again, just we're both on the same wavelength, like 1010 bajillion%.
Yeah, and I think every collaboration is different. It's like, for some people, like, Skyping all the time is probably necessary. For other people, maybe not so much. I mean, it could easily become a time waster or something like that.
I would, yes.
But I mean, if you guys kind of have that mind meld thing going on where you guys are coming from the same page, I feel like you don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully she feels the same way when she hears this. Maybe she'll be like, we should Skype more. But
I'm feeling very self-conscious about the Skype time we have, or the lack thereof.
But I think it's great. I think it's great. I hope that she's enjoying herself. She says she is, but she's also super laid back. So I'm always like, I hope that you don't need anything. Let me know if you need it. She's like, I'm great. I'm like, all right.
I know you've, you said in college you already were told that you have a writing voice, and that you've written, you wrote Banjo. Was that for CMYK?
No, it was Dark Horse Presents.
Oh, it's Dark Horse Presents. Yeah, so you did Banjo. So you've written things in the past before. Do you feel like going into tackling a series like this, there was any learning curve to writing, or not so much?
I think I just had to learn how to not over describe, I guess, because what I was writing before writing little comic book stories was I was like writing like short stories and novel type things. Like, that's what my jams were, like writing long form stuff. And there's a fear in comics where you have to like break that stuff up into panels. Like, you can't just like talk eloquently and describe every little biddle thing. It'll biddle, really. I'm a writer, and I just said it'll biddle. Oh, for fuck's sake.
You're not a speaker, you're a writer.
Thank you. I don't even like saying that. That's crazy. But what was it? Like, I just feel like it's hard. I just had to learn how to like consolidate my ideas into shorter things, and also lean into the fact that there's an artist who's going to know exactly what they're doing. And I think working with Declan gave me a huge benefit of seeing exactly what that's like, because the 2 short stories I did do before this huge thing was with Dec. And Dec is a total pro, a total awesome storyteller in his own way. You could give that guy like 5 sentences and he'll make you 5 issues. Like, he's got that shit on lockdown. And Vanessa's also just as great. So I think I just had to learn how to simplify, and writing the larger arc, I think, again, just had to simplify a little more. I would look back at my first and second issues and see how much larger they were in terms of describing things and loading her with reference. But then by like the 3rd and 4th issue, I was like, I forget that she's from Florida. Like, I don't need to give her so much reference. I don't need to like explain. And I mean, because that's the thing, is I wasn't explaining shots. I was like explaining character or the illustration part about it. Like, here are 2 people talking in a room. She should look really upset, like they've never spoken in years. Like, I'm like describing, like putting Vanessa in the role, and I'm like, I need to just fuck off and be like, she looks upset, and Vanessa will draw.
She's pensive, but not too pensive.
Yes, exactly. I don't need to explain exactly how upset on a scale of 1 to 10 this person is.
Right.
It's just silly things like that. And I don't even know if Vanessa hated it, but I certainly, when I looked back at the first issue after writing the 4th issue to do a lettering draft, I was like, oh God, I'm so awful. Like, I gotta no more do this. So like the most recent issues have been really clean.
I think it comes down to like, trust and understanding, and kind of figuring out how everybody works as you move along.
Yes.
Because it's, I've talked to a lot of, weirdly, I've been on this role of people who are kind of relatively new to the world of writing comics. And one of the things that everybody says is like, you start, I've talked to a lot of editors who say like people who are new to comics often over-explain and write too much.
Yes.
And it's like you're filling a panel with like 70,000 words and all this stuff like that. And you realize that, as an artist, you know that the art can tell the story just as much, and you kind of figure that out as you go along.
Yeah.
But you have a head start because you're coming from a colorist role where you see, I don't know, I kind of feel like colorists and letters and everything like that have like an advantage coming in because they see the world from a slightly different perspective.
We see it from production.
Yeah, you see it from production. Yeah. So I'm sure that you're very much like a lot of writers might not. I mean, I'm sure that most writers are pretty scheduled, but I bet you have a very like.
Oh man, Are you going to talk about schedule? Like me, how I view a schedule?
Yeah, because I imagine
Yeah.
you're like, I got to get her scripts because I don't want to be that person that's holding her up.
Yes, I am. By the time our first issue comes out, I think we're thinking this August. We haven't actually solicited yet. We're going to be done with the first arc.
Wow.
It's going to be locked. Like Vanessa will just be drawing forward or taking a break, and we're going to have incredible amounts of lead time. Actually, forgot to mention that on the panel yesterday. But yeah, I did not mess around with scheduling this book. If anybody's the weakest link, it's me, because I'm coloring a bajillion things, and I'm also trying to color my own book and write it. But with scripts, I don't mess around. I think the longest she's ever had to wait for a script is like 5 days, and that already made me feel bad. But she thankfully had covers she could do, and she was traveling. I'm never gonna make her wait. I'm never gonna hopefully make my letterer wait. I'm just no, we're scheduled like a fucking perfect machine, because I refuse to
You don't want to be that person?
No, especially because I hate those people. No offense to all my collaborators and friends who know who you are, who have made my life a living hell. I'm not going to be that person, because it's a hard life. It's really hard when you have no time or when you have no communication. And I think maybe at some points, maybe Vanessa wishes I wasn't communicating with her all the time, telling her exactly what was going on. But I would much rather her never have to ask what's going on. So yeah, that's very, very important to me. Scheduling is incredibly important to me. And if anyone's listening to this who wants advice or is like coming up as a creator, I gotta say, just communicate with your team always. I talk about this all the time on Twitter, through the Red Cube account, to our interns that come through Red Cube. Communicate with your editors and communicate with your team if you cannot do something. I know that everyone doesn't want to disappoint someone. Like if you're given a deadline on a Friday and you know you're going to need till Monday, even if your editor told you it was Friday.
Just be realistic about it.
Just be realistic. Don't write them and say, okay, I'll try.
Yeah.
And then not write them all weekend and then screw everyone over. You need to just write them. They will be disappointed. It's probable, but you'd much rather be disappointed and hired again rather than disappointed and never hired again. So
yeah. So I want to ask about the number one issues are really tricky these days.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
they always are, right? I
Right.
mean, because it's like you have one chance at a first impression, and I think the first issue works really well. But
Oh, thank you,
it's
David.
also it's really unique because how it kind of drops in media res
Yes.
into the middle of the story and everything like
Yes.
that. What did you feel were the biggest challenges when it came to writing that first issue?
Well, originally, our second issue was actually our first issue, which was way more formulaic. But I decided to switch it. You haven't read the second issue yet. I'll
No.
give it to you later.
I think I've read 5 pages from it though. Yeah.
Yes, that was our pitch. But we switched them because I felt like the second issue was lacking a sort of the tone. It was lacking what I wanted to do. It put you too much into it already as the procedural, which is the farce, because it's not really going to be a procedural, but that is like what it seems like when you're a cop, right? So the first issue, going back to John Carpenter, I again was thinking, what am I really writing my love letters to? Like, what is this really about? And what are my biggest inspirations? And what do I want people to get from me right away? So procedurals, cool. Like I love Castle. The show Castle's great. But did I really want my introduction to the readership and with Vanessa be Castle? And I thought, no. I want this to be Assault on Precinct 13. And so I wrote an Assault on Precinct 13
so
issue.
different.
Yes. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I told Declan, and I often sing the Assault on Precinct 13 tune because it's like one of my favorite movies ever, the original, and that's basically what the whole first issue is. And I told my editor, and my editor was like, yep, that sounds great, like that's way more gripping. I think it'll have people very excited. And then when I wrote it and I did it, I think everybody was excited. And when Vanessa started turning in art for it, I know it's really different, but there's one thing that I really cannot stand about comics. It's that whole formula of the acts. And I know that acts are important in writing, act 1, 2, and 3 and all that, but I don't want to always do that. I really don't. I don't want to like also bury the lead, but I just don't want to. I didn't come all this way and wanting to do my first thing and just make it a formulaic piece of, thing that you can get anywhere. I wanted it to be very weird and unusual and hopefully worth the price of admission.
I feel like my favorite comics these days are the ones that don't just try to be what everything else has been before, because that's the way it's done. Like I really like the Black Monday Murders by Jonathan Hickman and Tom Coker. Like that is a bonkers book.
Hickman's always weird.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous book, but I love it, and it reads like nothing I've ever read. And I like the fact that it's like $4.99, and it's basically a small graphic novel in of itself.
Oh man, yeah.
But it's like it's an experience, and it's unlike anything else. And I really love Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, and it's got footnotes, and it's got non-violent solutions to problems, and all these different things. And they're books that I didn't really ever expect. Like, I don't think I could ever say, hey, this is a book that I want to read. But then when I read it, I'm like, I love it because it's different. It's trying to be something that is all of itself.
I think it's about experimenting. Like, hopefully the experiments don't fail. And I mean, as well with Redlands, I know you've read our first copy, but our first PDF rather. But I will say that's really a preview PDF because we do have more back content going in. You're talking about all these extra things that you like. And Redlands is actually going to have an expanded sort of universe that's actually described in newspaper articles that will be at the back of every issue.
Oh, that's cool.
We're going to have about 4 pages per issue, and it's all going to focus on newspaper headlines. And I actually have an actual journalist writing them. So they're going to be very much in tune with how journalism is, because she actually has a journalist degree and she's amazing. She's my BFF from New York City. And it's going to be, I think, really, really significant to the book because it's all about trying to bring you into Redlands for better or for worse.
Build a world.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm hoping. I really am hoping that it's going to be weird enough though that it'll hook people, and hopefully the newspaper will explain some of the weird things that you just kind of get thrown into in the first issue. But I will say, if you give the first issue a shot, definitely keep going because I promise there is a narrative. The first issue, I mean, it's Assault on 13th. I just wanted it to be a siege. I wanted it to be a siege issue where it's chaos. You don't even see our heroes till the end. I say heroes, but they're terrible people. They kill a lot of people. But I wanted.
They might have deserved it.
Yeah, they were pretty bad people, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I just wanted it to be a siege. I wanted you to see how terrible your heroes are really going to be, basically.
I've talked to a lot of writers who say that like the key to a good first issue is the last page.
Oh yeah, you're saying that.
Yeah, and your last page is awesome.
Oh,
the
thank
last
you.
panel is amazing. It's
Thank
just like
you.
it's a very, I don't know. I'm trying to visualize it right now. It kind of reminds me. I'm like thinking like Tarantino-ish.
Ooh,
Yeah,
thank you. I
'cause it's
did watch
kinda
way
got
too
that-
much of that as a kid.
But I want to ask. You are a busy person.
Yes.
You
I gotta
color a
go.
lot of stuff. but I wanted to ask you. About being a writer. Like, what made you want to add that to your list of things you're doing? Was it just because you had the right project, or is it because you just wanted to kind of get into that world a bit?
I honestly, I think if this goes well, that'll be great. But I don't even know if I have other stories in me. I don't
Sure.
really have an interest as well in writing any big characters. I think Redlands is just important to me because I want to say a lot about Florida, that things that I said in debates in high school, things that I was upset about in college and never felt like I could articulate. If people get me kind of tipsy at these conventions or even out a pub in Ireland, the things that I mostly get upset about are criminal injustice and feminism and racism. And these are things that are just extremely, extremely important to me, like to the point that I think it's kind of all I think about sometimes, aside from coloring.
And Ratatouille.
And Golden Girls.
Yeah.
Like right now.
I have a hilarious Golden Girls story I have to tell you.
Oh,
after
I
this.
love Golden Girls. I'm gonna hear it, but I'm gonna love it too, I'm sure. But I get really mad, and I just really, really have a lot to say, and I'm really passionate about it. And then as well as I love horror. I love horror so much. I think it's a very, very excellent genre. I know that people, horror is not for everybody, but I think horror is so long lasting, and horror is going to be here forever. Like, cause fear is in everybody, and these things that we're all dealing with right now, especially since November. So I'm writing to basically, in that way, I don't know how many people will enjoy it, because it's not, there will be catharsis in it. Like anything, like any good fantasy where you are angry about something, you get to punch things. I want there to be an element of mostly just me getting to, what's the word? Put it all on the paper instead of it all being in my head.
Well, it's therapeutic. It's like it gives you an outlet for your own fears and your own thoughts on the world and everything like that. And that's what it really is for a lot of people. Is it's you putting yourself into a world. And one of the things I think is amazing about all art forms and all narratives and everything like that is like, I just had Daniel Warren Johnson on my show, and we were talking about his book Extremity, which very much has some real world themes and some like interesting stuff that is deeper than just like cool shit where you like chop people in half and stuff like that. But I think it's cool how like you could read Redlands as just like a cool assault on Precinct 13 story, or you could start thinking about the deeper themes and like how what it means for like racism and all the the violence and criminal justice and everything like that. You, depending on who you are, it can mean different things. Right. And I think that's really cool. And for you, it's a very personal thing.
Yeah, it's
for
very
me, personal. I could just be like, it's like the Kraft times assault on Precinct 13. Which
is great. I'm happy to have those readers too, but I definitely hope that there is like the the sub-level people. And I always think like most art's like that. There's always the onion thing that you can always peel back the layers and artist intention and all these different things. But definitely, I think that if you go to the book to enjoy it for what it is, that's great. But if you also go to the book and you're hoping for those themes and you want to think when you put the book down, hopefully Redlands will help you think about things that you don't always like to think about or are too complex for people to think about sometimes because they make you feel uncomfortable. The book is, I certainly have an aim with Redlands to make everyone feel uncomfortable.
And I think that's something people need more of.
Yeah,
because
personally, I think
I mean,
so.
if you're in your own bubble and you don't think about these things, I think it's not good for the way that you treat people around you because you're not thinking about the ramifications of your actions, and et cetera, et cetera. But hugely divergent turn. I have just a few more questions for you. And I have a question that I've always wondered about you.
Okay.
You were from Florida.
Yeah.
But you live in Dublin.
Yeah.
How did that happen? From a pure climate standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense. But how did that happen?
Okay. As quickly as I can. I graduated from school. I went to New York City because I wanted to be the artist who lived in New York City. It's where I wanted to be all my life. I moved to New York City. I met Declan Shalvey. On our very first time ever hanging out, we now call it our first date because we fell in the love. And I was there for about a year, and Declan went back to Dublin. He was living actually in Ennis with his mother at the time because he was traveling so much back and forth. And so we were separated for 3 months while I was in New York City. So we had dated for 3 months. He left for 3 months. And during that 3-month period, while we were doing this over long distance, I said to him, like, this is going really well, and I don't think I can do this again, because he knew he was coming back again for 3 months, and then he was going back to Ireland for 3 months. So this was basically possibly going to be our life, although he was also getting scared because when you go back and forth like that so much, they start to wonder if like you're laundering money or something. So they were like, why are you traveling back and forth so much? So it just started to become a little daunting for me. And I was like, I don't think I can do this again. How about when you come back to New York City, we just try living together? And he was like, oh, we've only been together 6 months though by then. I was like, look, worst case, go back to your friends. We'll know how it is, because the longer plan is if we get on well for 3 months in New York City living together, I'm going to move to Dublin and we'll try it out. We'll just try it. So, I mean, I wasn't really, expecting it to turn into what it did. Obviously, I'm very grateful. I think me and Declan we'd both been hurt, and we'd both been in relationships before. So we didn't want to get too overcommitted, I guess, in a way. But I think it became pretty obvious, like on that 3rd month in Ireland, like when you could leave or stay, I was like, this is it. This is my home. And then we had this running gag that I was only going to be there. Our plan was to only stay in Ireland for a year and then move back to New York City. And we didn't. And now we've been there for 5 years, and I'm going on my 6th year there. And we're talking about staying, especially since November. And we have no plans to go back to America, really. I love it there. And really, I'm there for Declan, but I stayed because of the everything. Dublin, Ireland is an amazing place. No one come though, because then it will get crowded and then it will be terrible and it will become too hip and gentrified. But right now it's really cool. No, it's a great place, and it's really, really just awesome. People there are so friendly. I love the no guns thing. That's pretty great. There's also a lot of problems, of course, in Ireland. I'm not what's the word? Naive to those, but mostly it's not Florida. And it's way better than New York City, in my opinion.
It's no Alaska, though.
I'm gonna see. Maybe we'll move to Alaska
there
in 3
you go.
years.
There you go. I think it's funny when I graduated from college, I was like, I'm gonna move to Portland, or I'm gonna move to Seattle, because it's like, I want to move to a big city, right? And like half my friends moved to Portland, the other half moved to Anchorage, because that's where we were born and raised and everything. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this job in Alaska because it was in recession, which apparently is eternal.
Yes.
And I was like, it's a good paying job. I'm gonna jump into it, work there for a bit, and then move down to Portland. And then I met my wife, and she was born in Hawaii but lived most of her life in Texas, and she hates hot weather, and so now we can never move. And so now I'm in Alaska the rest of my life, but I never expected it. But it's home.
It's happy. And you just bought a house as well and all.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
despite the paper mache roof, it's pretty great.
You've made that joke twice now. I'm gonna actually have to clear with you later if you actually are being kind of serious.
Well,
you're not serious.
I don't know a lot about roofs, but they shouldn't let so much water in.
You look up and you see the newspaper, and you're like, wait, that's why? Why is there newspaper
is that
on my roof?
Swan? Why is that? Okay, so follow-up question to the Irish thing.
Yeah.
Are fans at American cons ever surprised you're not Irish?
Yes. Yes. A lot of readers are like, oh, you're not Irish. And it's even happened a few times in Ireland. Like sometimes Irish people will put me up for things like an interview here or there. And then I'll get on the phone with them. They'll be like, oh, you're American. I'm like, yeah, I'm American. And it doesn't help because this whole thing is, well, Jordie's got red hair and pale skin. I got to let you know something. I went to Ireland expecting to see lots of redheaded people. There are no redheaded people in Ireland. I'm sorry. Of course, they're listening. I'm sure there are a few. But when you go to Edinburgh, that's where in Scotland, that's where you see a ton of redheaded people. I got there and I was like, this is like a rainbow of red. I am so happy to be here. In Ireland, all those gorgeous ladies all have dark raven black hair. It's raven black hair is the Irish thing, not red. Yeah. That is a stereotype.
Scotland's got that for real.
Scotland does have it for real. Scotland is my jam. If we ever did move, we'd probably move to Edinburgh.
Edinburgh is amazing.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
Oh, you went to Edinburgh and you didn't come to Dublin?
Well,
yeah, I'll scold you later.
Edinburgh was amazing. I mean, like, I got
Edinburgh is awesome.
I stayed at this hostel where this guy like loved me and he loaned me a kilt and some like
what?
amazing Scottish wear. I have
amazing.
pictures, and it was like the most ridiculous night of my entire life. And there was this guy who he like this really Scottish guy loved me and was convinced that I was Ralph Nader for some reason. I have no idea why. I don't think he really knows who Ralph Nader is.
Scotland.
But there's all these pictures of him saluting me behind me. I'm like, why are you saluting Ralph Nader? This makes no sense.
I love it.
Anyways, all right. So last couple of questions. I want to ask you some color specific questions.
Okay.
The last couple of years, colorists, between cover credits and Colorist Appreciation Day and et cetera, have really kind of picked up a lot in terms of the zeitgeist of comics, I think. Obviously it's the right thing to do, but with that happening, I'm curious, why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's been so much more attention to colorists in the past few years?
I think colorists are speaking out more, and I think that's important. I think when I first joined the industry like 6 years ago, I know that there was like an acceptance that like colorists were behind the scenes. I think there were obviously a lot of go-to very famous colorists, Dave Stewart, Dave McCaig, Laura Allred, Laura Martin. There were like a good 6 or 7 everyone would name and everyone always loved. But now you have all these new colorists, Tamara Bonvillain, Kelly Fitzpatrick, Marissa Louise. These are 3 ladies I'm all eating with tonight, which is why I remembered them first. There's just so many colorists out there now that it's not just the same 7 over and over anymore. But I think that a lot of these colorists, younger, newer, and the older vets are all talking more. Like, I do want this. I do want these things. I do want to be seen. And I don't at all like giving myself a pat on the back for any of these things at all, because I don't. It wasn't me, and it wasn't just one person at all. I think it was a whole sudden push of colorists, and I think maybe it also helps that comics have had a really interesting, I don't want to say a revival because comics obviously haven't went away, but there's something weird that's happened like in the last 7 years. Like,
totally agree.
It's just huge. I think the movies have helped. I think Image's popularity has helped. Everything's just exploding right now. But I think it's like, again, I was saying earlier, maybe to you, that there's this thing where people don't fight for themselves, but they'll fight for other people.
Yeah.
And I do think that's what happened, is that colorists and artists, like Declan does this art cred thing, and he doesn't normally get pissed off about himself. He gets pissed off for other people.
Right.
And I think the same thing was happening with colorists. So when I was having these like behind closed door conversations with colorists, and colorists would be like, oh, I don't have royalties on that. Oh, I'm not getting credit on that. Oh, whatever. I don't really mind. And I'd be like, you should fucking mind. You deserve that. You're fucking awesome. Do you need me to go punch someone in the face? And they'd be like, no, but maybe you're right. And then they would turn around and say, I need this. And then I also had colorists also, because I didn't believe in myself, like saying, you do need this. You should get better this. And I'd go, no, but then you think about it and you're like, I do deserve this. So I think a lot of it's just been people aren't gonna, take it anymore. People do realize their contributions are important. And I think it talks about value. And I do think a lot of creatives and freelancers don't value themselves. It's hard when you're an artist and it's your hobby. You don't see the value in what you do because you just enjoy it. And that is the value. But there is actually, unfortunately, a monetary value to what you do. And that should be respected and appreciated, whether or not that's a cut or just the cover credit that will help you get more gigs down the way. I mean, that's not strictly monetary. Right. Visibility is so important. So yeah, I think all that's just been pushing because people are finally saying, no, I deserve this. And there's no argument there. I
think one of the interesting things, and I think it comes partially because of where we're at in 2017, where, for better or worse, everybody has a voice. Mm-hmm. And it's easier to have that voice, and it's easier to speak up about stuff. And you're an outspoken person, but like you're talking about like Marissa Louise, like she writes those awesome columns for women.
Marissa. Yeah, she's so wise and amazing. Yeah, she's great. She
does that stuff on Women Write About Women Write on Comics. God, did I get that side name wrong? Anyways, but she does those columns where she like talks about colors.
Yeah.
And I feel like those things help me appreciate
They
color
do.
work even more. And that's one of the things I wanted to say is I think one of the interesting things about like the growth and respect for colorists is kind of how it's had an area of effect for not just colorists but also, you know, letters and designers and editors. I mean, I feel like I know a ton of editors, and I feel like editors are very vastly underrespected in the industry.
They are undervalued times a bajillion. I was just having this conversation yesterday with Marvel's great editor, Jake Thomas, who edits Moon Knight. And Moon Knight with Greg Smallwood is like one of my very favorite books that I'm coloring. I love Greg. I love you, Greg. I love you, Jake. I love you, Moon Knight. But I love it so much. But it's really interesting because we were talking about this. And I mean, of course, he's an editor, and he doesn't want to like say, he doesn't want to pat his own back because that's the thing. We don't want to value ourselves. You don't want to look like an egomaniac, or really like me, you also just have zero confidence at all. And you really do feel like a worm, because I do feel like a worm, and I feel very lucky that people like my stuff. But I mean, Jake was able to admit, like, I do feel undervalued by people, not at Marvel, but just people. And I noticed it, like I was telling Jake a story. Of course, I will not say names, but there's a really big artist who was working with a kind of a green editor over at another company. And he was a real asshole about it. The editor made some mistakes, learning, you know.
Right.
And this artist ripped him apart by email, was really rude to him, and also was really rude about him to other people. And I thought, like, in that moment, I think it's something where the way you treat an editor says a lot about you as a person. It's sort of like when you see somebody who's an asshole to a waiter, that says a lot about a person.
I had that exact conversation earlier
with
an editor.
Yeah. And I have said that. And I know I've made the joke again to you like 10 times today before and after this interview is about how I feel like I'm a lick, which is a very terrible Irish way of saying you're a brown noser, which makes lick so gross. But, you know, I don't try to be a suck up or a brown noser. I just genuinely do feel that editors make the books that are very successful. Like Marie Javins with Future Quest, I made sure to remind everybody, if you like Future Quest, you need to thank Marie Javins, because Marie Javins is the one that brought this team together. You know, Jeff Parker and Evan don't find each other cosmically and just get the book. It's Marie who...
Well, you guys did work on Flash Gordon.
Right, that's true. But Marie and Nick Cosby brought us together. And again, I don't know. I think as well when I first started in the industry, Declan Shalvey, of course, is so wise, like you, Dave. He has such incredible knowledge about all the things. And when I first started meeting people in New York City, it's not going to be like, oh, that's Jordie Bellaire. Oh, that's Nick Lowe. Oh, that's Sana. And I'd be like, I don't know who these people are. Like, because I mean, I was really green when I first started. And he'd be like, oh, they edited that. Oh, they edited that. And I'd be like, what? And then he'd start naming all these books. And be like, I love those books. I love that book. And very quickly, I mean, and then sometimes he'd introduce me to some editors and I'd be like, I don't like that book. And it was very clear when you're able to see these editors are curators, you know? And you respect some curators. So if you like Nick Lowe, for instance, Jake Thomas, Jordan White, we were just figuring out does like all the Star Wars books, all the Deadpool books.
Will Moss.
Oh, fucking hell. Will Moss is doing all the best things. And that's not to knock people we're not mentioning. It's just that these people are clearly, they care so much about the quality and the things that they're putting out. And that makes them not just editors, but curators. And I think that's really, really awesome. And letterers, of course. Our studio assistant, Aaron, who's also a writer, he tweeted this terrible image. He was like, comic book lettering is so important.
Yeah.
And he showed an injection page and he had the worst word balloons. And he's like, get yourself a professional letterer if you want to work in comics. Like, there's no excuse. And it's true. Like, and I told Declan, like, holy shit, we take for granted how we have Stephen Finch photographics, how we have Clayton Coles. Like, these we take for granted sometimes, but man, like, it can be bad.
They can make or break a book, and people don't think about that. That's the thing is, I did this interview with Steven with Phonographics a long time ago.
I love him. I'm gonna have to listen to that.
No. It was for this column I used to do in 2010 called Zuda Weekly about Zuda Comics.
I've got to look at that.
Yeah. Anyways, and I talk about, and I was asking him about his lettering, and this was back in my childhood days of not knowing anything about comics.
Oh, fair enough.
And I asked him, I was like, blah blah blah, how do you make your lettering stand out? I was like, if I stand out, it means I failed my job.
It's interesting, yes, because I've heard a lot of letterers say that. Clayton also says that.
Yeah. It's like you don't want people to notice. It's like you almost have to be imperceptible, because the only time people really notice, and this kind of works for colors too, is I think sometimes people notice you when something goes wrong.
Yes.
More so than anything. Because I think the interesting thing about color is like how, the work you do can change my mood or the atmosphere of a story.
That's tone, man.
It's tone as you're reading it, but you don't think about that. It's imperceptible.
Exactly. And that's like all that subliminal awesomeness. I talk about this when I give talks about film and how a film will make you feel things like without actually hitting you over the head with it if it's a good film and it has subtlety. And I do think that there's a subtlety with letterers and colorists. But I can, if you don't mind me going back though to the respect of that, I think that there is an aspect though of like wanting to be hidden in a way, but you also have to remember that just because your work is so quality and so subtle, it doesn't mean that you also need to be subtle.
No.
Like your person and your talent should be seen and understood by all. Like with Phonographics, he's lettering Redlands, and I'm very lucky that he said yes. I hope he stays on it. He's so busy. But I told him like, I want your name on the cover. And I know he's always been very he doesn't want to, I don't think he wants that attention.
He seems low impact.
Yeah, but I'm like, no. And he did put his name on the cover. Because I think I finally told him like, you are important to me and to this book, and without you, this book would not be complete. Like, I need you to credit yourself. Please credit yourself. It's important to me. And I mean, we fought him on injection, and he didn't. Like, and he wants to be hidden. And he even had a lame excuse once. And I'm sorry, Steven, if you ever listen to this, but he was like, it won't suit the design. And when I heard that, I told Declan like, that's just what he's saying, because he thinks that you guys will take that. Like, that, you'll
he's the designer, so he's got that as an out.
I was so pissed.
That's
I was
hilarious.
like, fucking jerk. But I don't sign covers, so I'm one to complain.
I said this before on a thing I wrote for Sketched, where I kind of have a feel like, and I think this works for letters and editors too, but I think it's interesting how, for me as a reader, I feel like because colorists and letters and editors can work on a lot of different projects at the same time, that's not explicitly like 100% their project. Like, writers like control, like if I'm going to read a Jason Aaron book, it's going to probably read like a Jason Aaron book. But like if you sign on to a book, it's because you believe in it.
Yeah.
And I believe in Jordie Bellaire. So I know I'm going to like the comic, and I think it's in a weird way, it's like letters and colorists and editors kind of have like a weird tastemaker element to it.
Yes, that's what I mean by curators and stuff, man. Like, I'm happy you said that, because a lot of the times people are like, Jordie, who's coloring 75% of all books or whatever.
Yeah, and they're all good.
But when I hear that though, I have to remind people like, I'm not. But the thing is, I've been very smart about the books that I say yes to. And those are the books that have been on end of the year lists, like Matt Wilson. Matt Wilson has been very selective about the books that he takes.
He normally does like 6, I think.
Yeah. He colors like a lot, but Matt does not color as many as I think some people may think, but he's so good and smart about taking exactly what he needs to. And I know he's happy on all those books, though. He's on great books, and I hate his guts for it. But those books are so significantly important right now to the comics climate that it looks like he's coloring a lot. Yeah. He's coloring just the right ones. And that's what I want to do. I think that all colorists and letterers and designers should really aspire to that. Don't just say yes to everything. Take the ones that are really going to make you feel good. And actually one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was, don't work for the job you have, work for the job that you want. And that is what I also did a lot in comics. And now I am on all the books I really do want. I am very happy on all my books. I'm proud of all of them too. I think that like 6 years ago, I might not have said that. And I think that when you get to that point, obviously, I know some people will be like, oh, you're just lucky you even got in. Like, not everybody has that, advantage. But when you get there, man, and you
gotta fight for it.
Yeah. When you get there, you'll be so happy. You'll be so happy. And you'll know that your name hopefully will be synonymous with quality. Maybe not to everyone, but your idea of quality,
I think it's funny. I was this analogy just popped in my head. You guys are like the Stanley Tucci of comics. It's like you see Stanley Tucci in a movie, and the movie is always better.
It is.
Because
I do love Stanley
Tucci is amazing. It's like not everybody's gonna be Christian Bale, but the character actors are quite a bit that sign up for roles. You're just like, it's gonna make this better because it's freaking Tony Shalhoub or Stanley Tucci.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I often always try to aspire to be the David Finch of colorists some days, or Fincher, I should say.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Working with David Finch, it took me a long time to not call Finch on Batman Fincher, because I've just been thinking Fincher since I was 11.
Did you tell him you loved his work in Seven?
I might on accident by the end of this thing. But no, I really want to be the Fincher. I always am thinking about Fincher and Coen brothers. Like, it's so funny that you make the Stanley Tucci joke, but I do think in terms of film, like, so I'm always thinking about how I want to be that filmmaker. Because I mean, Fincher's only done like maybe 7 or 8 really big films.
He's kind of like the Daniel Day-Lewis of directors.
Oh, he's so great. Why do you keep talking in actors, man? Films.
Well, you know what? If you really want to talk about what I am all about, I'm all about movie scores. So normally I'd be like, he's the Dario Marinelli of...
wow, you're a super nerd. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a super nerd.
Atonement's the best score.
Oh my God, you and Declan are made for each other.
Does he like Atonement?
He loves Atonement. I've never watched it because
the score is amazing.
I can't stand period films.
Oh, okay.
Sorry for anybody who likes them. I can't. And plus, Keira Knightley quietly in another period film. I'm like, oh. That Declan, I actually told, I'm really sorry now to bore everybody, but like on our 5th year anniversary, we planned on doing something really special. And I was like, I'll finally watch Atonement. We didn't watch Atonement.
Oh my God.
I got out of it. We just like watched something else and like went out to dinner and then he fell asleep.
It's sad. It's sad.
I hear but Declan likes to make me cry.
Oh, that's.
He loves sad movies. So we're always watching terribly sad movies.
You're like, don't you want to watch Ratatouille?
Yeah.
Golden Girls?
He's still not seen Ratatouille. That's a great place to end this. Declan,
this
never watched Ratatouille.
This con has to end. We just have to have a showing of Ratatouille in your guys' hotel room.
He's never even seen Zootopia. He hates me.
I'm so mad right now.
Thank you.
I
I'm
need
glad.
to stop talking.
I finally found a weakness in Declan Shalvey that
Well, that's
everyone's
why
going to hate.
I was talking about animated movies earlier, and you were like, you looked at it, and I was like, what's that about?
Because we were just having this conversation with Jake Thomas yesterday.
He's a criminal.
You better not cut any of this out because I want the whole world to
He's a
know.
criminal.
Yes, he needs to go to jail, as I said earlier. He's going to be in Redlands, and we're going to kill him.
All right, that's it. All right, you heard it here first. Scoop. Declan Shalvey's going to die in Redlands.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the chat,
Thank
Jordie.
you,
It was
David.
a really good time.
You're lovely. It's nice to finally be on your show. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with Jordie Bellaire from Emerald City ComiCon. You can find Jordie on Twitter at @WoJordie, her color work in comics like Injection, Batman and the Autumnlands, and more, as well as her work writing and coloring the upcoming comic Redlands at Image with artist Vanesa del Rey. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen, as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.